Good Thursday morning, March the 4th. Time is flying. So glad you're here with us this morning. Welcome to Coffee with Doc. That's good coffee this morning. Well, we're going into chapter 15 of Revelation this morning, and I hope you kind of followed along with us. We're getting a panoramic view, kind of an interval view of the rest of the tribulation period. But with yesterday morning's time, we began to wrap up that last part of the last 3.5 years of the tribulation period, and we're coming up on something that we call the time or the battles. It's actually a campaign. It's not one battle, but it's a series of battles, a whole campaign that results in a location called Armageddon. And so we refer to it as the Battle of Armageddon. That comes at the end of the 7.5 years. But that's when God literally pours out all of his wrath. And that's what we talked about yesterday, was pouring out the wrath of God, and how that it's all being poured out here at the end. And where we left off yesterday morning was a river of blood as deep as a horse's bridle for 180 miles. In that particular pouring out of God's wrath. And so today we go into chapter 15, and John gets another vision of what's happening in that last part of the 3.5 years, with the great battle between the forces of the Antichrist, the beast, and the false prophet, and the dragon, the great dragon, Satan. And so in chapter 15, it's a very short chapter, but it introduces us to what in chapter 16 is the 7 last bowls of God's wrath, the 7 bowls of wrath that is poured out at the end of the tribulation period. So we've saw it's going to be bad, and now we're going to see how bad. So join with me in chapter 15 of Revelation, beginning with verse 1, where John said, "I saw in heaven another great and marvelous sign. 7 angels with the 7 last plagues." Okay, he's setting us up. These are the 7 last plagues of the tribulation period. He said last because with them God's wrath is completed. That is, the wrath poured out on the earth is completed. In verse 2 he says, "I saw what looked like a sea of glass, glowing with fire, and standing beside the sea. And those who had been victorious over the beast and its image and over the number of its name, they held harps given them by God and sang the song of God's servant Moses and of the Lamb." Now, what's happening here is a picture of we win. The battle is over, and we win, and they're singing to the praise of God. And the song is, "Great and marvelous are your deeds, Lord God Almighty. Just and true are your ways, King of the nations. Who will not fear you, Lord, and bring glory to your name? For you alone are holy." Now listen to this. "All nations will come and worship before you, for your righteous acts have been revealed." He's setting us up for that great millennial kingdom. He said in verse 5, "After this I looked, and I saw in heaven," now he's looking in heaven now, "the temple," that is the tabernacle of the covenant law, the tabernacle where God's presence is. And he says, "And it was opened. And out of the temple came the 7 angels with the 7 plagues." Now this is getting us set up for the next chapter, which is the 7 bowls of God's wrath. And it says, "Out of the temple came the 7 angels with the 7 plagues." And listen to their description. "They were dressed in clean, shining linen, and wore golden sashes around their chests. Then one of the 4 living creatures gave to the 7 angels 7 golden bowls filled with the wrath of God, who lives forever and ever." He's setting us up to see the last part of that 7.5 year tribulation, when God brings together all of the forces to the battle, the war, the campaign on the plains of Megiddo. And so he says, one of the 4 living creatures gave them 7 golden bowls filled with the wrath of God, who lives forever and ever. And the temple was filled with smoke. But now listen to where the smoke came from. And the temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his sheer power. And no one could enter the temple until the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were completed. No one could stand in the presence of God as he pours out his wrath. As he pours out his wrath. Yes, I know it's going to be very brief this morning, but I want you to think about this. No one could enter into the presence of God until the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were completed, having 7 golden bowls filled with the wrath of God, and he's about to pour it out on mankind. Why? Why would anyone reject Jesus Christ knowing they're going to go through this? It's beyond me. Totally beyond me. And if you think this is bad, wait until in the morning, because we're going to discuss climate change. We'll see you in the morning. God bless you. Have a great day today. And we'll end the week with the 7 bowls of God's wrath.